Hello, I'm Rachel Plummer, and this is a free creative writing workshop aimed at teenagers. This is the second video in this series, but each one should stand alone and you don't have to do them in order. I upload a new video every Tuesday. There's also another series on this channel aimed at younger children and their families. For this workshop, all you'll need is something to write with. That could be a pen and paper, or a computer, or you could dictate to someone who can write for you, whatever you're most comfortable with. We also won't worry at all about spelling and grammar while we're doing these creative writing sessions. As before, we'll start with a warm-up and then go on to a few more in-depth exercises. And today we're going to be focusing on characterization, that is, creating and writing good, believable characters. Do you have a favourite character from a book, play, or movie? What do you like about them? What do you think makes a good character? Can you think of any characters you just hated? For our warm-up, I'd like you to write a quick description of yourself in the third person, imagining that you are a character in a book. The third person means you're writing about yourself using pronouns like she, he, or they instead of I or me or my. How would you introduce a character like you to a story? What do you think are your key personality traits? How will you describe the way you look, speak, act, or think? Take about 5 to 10 minutes just now to write this description, then come back and we'll continue. Pause the video now. How did that go? It can be strange to think of ourselves in the third person, but it helps you to understand what's involved in creating a realistic character, and how hard it can be to convey everything about a character in just a short amount of description. We're going to start our exploration of character now with the idea of a protagonist. A protagonist is generally the main character of your story. They're the ones moving the story forward. Sometimes they're the title character, so think of Harry Potter, Sherlock Holmes, or even Moana. For our first exercise, I'd like you to think of 2 main characters you think are well written, likeable, or in some way interesting, from 2 different sources. The sources can be books, films, fairy tales, myths, plays, video games, anything you like. But each one should come from a different source. Have you thought of 2 characters? Great! Next, I'd like you to write a script imagining these 2 characters interacting with each other. A script usually has a certain format where the names of the characters are written in capitals at the start of each bit of their dialogue. Because you are only or mostly writing dialogue, you need to convey a lot about what's going on in this imagined scene using only the words the characters say. You can write some stage directions, but try to keep most of what's going on in the dialogue or speech. The script can be as short as you like, and you can set it anywhere. Though if you're struggling to get started, you could try having both characters be in the queue for the same bus, or arguing over who gets the last slice of pizza. The point of this exercise is to get inside the characters' heads and try to write them as convincingly as possible. What would this character do in this specific situation? It doesn't matter if it's silly or serious, and it doesn't have to be a situation that the characters would normally be in. In fact, it might be funnier if it's not. Press pause on the video and spend up to about 20 minutes on this task, then come back. How did you find script writing? Maybe it's something you're already comfortable with, or maybe it's a brand new skill for you. Either way, practice will help you to become a better writer, even if it's just for fun. If you have a friend or family member who is willing to help you, you can act your script out. How does it sound when someone else is reading the dialogue you wrote out loud? So, what makes a good protagonist? I asked writers on Twitter to tell me what they think, and I got some great replies. Here you can see a few of them. For our next exercise, I want you to invent a protagonist. Any protagonist at all. I'll leave the details totally in your hands. I've uploaded a character profile which you can download, print and fill out, or if you've not got access to a printer, you can just write out the answers to the different sections. There's a link to this character profile template in the description below this video. Basically, you need to work out what your character looks like, how old they are, where they're coming from, and where they're hoping to go. Ideally, it would be good to know something about what motivates your character. What's their mission in life? What's their day-to-day routine? What are their loves? What are their hates? Things like that. Remember, you're not trying to come up with a whole story here, just the character. Try not to overthink it either. Don't second-guess yourself. You can always come back to this later and refine it. Okay, press pause on the video now and come back when you have an outline of your main character. Do you have a protagonist? Fantastic. Well, the next step in structuring a story is to create some tension for your protagonist. Just seeing them go about their daily lives isn't going to be very interesting. So most stories have some kind of tension which helps to give the story action and an overall shape. Usually this comes from another character, known as the antagonist. The antagonist is basically the villain of the story. Can you think of any iconic villains from books, movies, etc. that you know of? One of my favourite villains is Professor Moriarty from the Sherlock Holmes stories by Arthur Conan Doyle. Here's how Holmes describes Moriarty to his assistant, Watson. He is the Napoleon of crime, Watson. He is the organiser of half that is evil and nearly all that is undetected in this great city. He is a genius, a philosopher, an abstract thinker. He has a brain of the first order. He sits motionless like a spider in the centre of its web. But that web has 1,000 radiations, and he knows well every quiver of them. He is extremely tall and thin. His forehead domes out in a white curve, and his 2 eyes are deeply sunken in his head. He is clean-shaven, pale and ascetic-looking, retaining something of the professor in his features. His shoulders are rounded from much study, and his face protrudes forwards and is forever slowly oscillating from side to side in a curiously reptilian fashion. I think Arthur Conan Doyle does a great job here of conveying how unsettling and predatory Moriarty is. He's described as being like a spider and like a reptile, both quite predatory animals, but also animals that aren't mammals like us. They aren't cute, they aren't cuddly, they aren't anything like us, the readers. So we feel Moriarty as being different and a bit dangerous. Many antagonists are given physical features that somehow echo their status as the villain of the story. Consider this description, where we're introduced to Cruella de Vil in the novel 101 Dalmatians. At that moment, the peace was shattered by an extremely strident motor horn. A large car was coming towards them. It drew up at a big house just ahead of them, and a tall woman came out onto the front doorsteps. She was wearing a tight-fitting emerald satin dress, several ropes of rubies, and an absolutely simple white mink cloak, which reached to the high heels of her ruby red shoes. The bright green and bright red, like a poisoned dart frog, feel like warning colours in this description. Here is what some writers on Twitter had to say about what makes a good antagonist. Our next task is to invent an antagonist to go along with the protagonist we've already created. You can use the same profile template as before, or you can write a piece of introductory description like the examples we've just looked at. Pause the video and create your antagonist now. How did that go? Was it easier or more difficult than creating a protagonist? Keep hold of these character descriptions because we're going to come back to story structure in future workshops and you might want to use these characters. For our last exercise, I'd like you to pick one of the 2 characters you've created today and write a monologue from their perspective. A monologue is a long speech by one character without interruptions. Your character can introduce themselves, maybe talk about something important to them, or they can try to convince us of something, like that they're good, a good person, or that what they're doing is important, or why we shouldn't trust the other character. Think about how you're going to show aspects of the character's personality in this speech. Are they loud, bossy, shy, funny, sincere? Try to make that come across in what they're saying and in the way they're saying it. Pause the video now, write your monologue, and then come back. How did that go? Did you finish your monologue? When you've finished writing, you can share your work on social media using the hashtag #WritingWithRachel, or you can contact me by email at writewithrachel@gmail.com if you have any questions or problems, or if you'd like feedback on your writing. If you'd like to be kept up to date with future videos, then click the subscribe button. And if you have any comments or suggestions for future workshops, then feel free to leave a comment below. I hope you've enjoyed writing with me today, and that you have a safe and positive week. Goodbye for now, and happy writing.